when we're fairing on boats, there's very few areas where there's any sharp corners or internal angles that are left square. We almost always have rounds on boats. It allows water to move away from the corner and fall out. It stops people from hurting themselves when the boat might move and you fall around on the deck. So we're almost always building radiuses or curves, or in this case, coves. We've got an internal angle here that's about sort of 100 degrees and a cove in here to match the existing coves on the rest of the boat. So we have a look at the boats that were, the coves that were in existence on the boat. There's them over here. We've got a series of coving tools here that we keep on key rings and so on, all different size radiuses. We test the original cove to see which tool is going to work. Just rock the tool in the cove, make sure it's going to create the same sort of shape as is there. Choose our coving tool and we'll lay bolt through this corner and pull the cove, and I'll show you how it's done. In this particular instance, this coving tool is slightly broader than what that cove is, which is fine. The shrinkage will take it back to about the same, and it'll give us a little bit of sand. And we're going to use this coving tool to drag a cove through this corner. First step is obviously to have your area, your internal angle prepared. This is prepared, been blown off, it's nice and clean. We're not hiding any big voids in here that we haven't picked out and cleaned up. There's no big wads of dust or crap in the corner. And we're just going to lay the bog in the corner. Now, you want to lay it in there as tidy as you can. The tidier you get it in there, the less we're going to have to clean up after it. There's a fair bit of cleaning up when you're doing coves. We just run a bead of bog along your trail, set it in the corner like so. Do that all the way through. Just trying to put slightly more bog in the corner than you're going to need without overloading it by too much. Then you get your coving tool, rest it in the corner the way you want it, and keep it at a right angle to the boat. Start tipping your coving tool over. They've got a certain amount of profile. It'll change the angle that it gives you in the cove. So you've got to just try and keep it. It doesn't even have to be kept at 90 degrees, but it has to be kept wherever it's kept. So it's easier just to set it up on 90 degrees and keep it there. Drag it through your bog, keeping it as smooth as you can. Then the final part of the process is to take the excess away from the two flat surfaces. Your nice flat little scraper, just slide it along on the flat surface. Take the excess bog back to where the coving tool touches the boat. Take it off the bottom, take it off the top. With the coving tool being a perfect round, having done a real nice clean job of the cove, very little sanding required in coves, but I'll show you how to do that anyway when she's dry. got a cove now that's been installed. Hopefully it's nice and smooth and a consistent radius all the way through. Sometimes, especially if you've got bigger coves that are on fresh new build jobs, the first cove will suck back in a fair way with the shrinkage of the bog. The epoxies will shrink a little bit, as I've mentioned before. Sometimes you'll have to just scratch them up lightly and put a second cove over the top, or the cove shape sucks in. It sucks in more where it's deep than where it's shallow, so you end up with a bit of a hollow in the bottom of the cove. So sometimes you need to put on two applications of bog on the cove. This one will be okay, it was quite shallow. I just want to talk about how to sand coves now. Basically you've got to duplicate the sand of the size of the cove, the shape of the cove with a sanding tool, slightly smaller than the cove itself. You can do that a number of different ways. You can just roll paper up tight into a nice round shape. They can lose their shape and get a bit squished as you use them. Or you can get something like a PVC pipe or a piece of dowel. Use that as the base, and then put some paper around that until you get to the right size. I always think about sanding coves in a way that if you think you're going to be able to sand a better shape into a cove with a bit of sandpaper than what the cove can be in itself, which is taken straight off a perfectly machined radius and pulled well, you're kidding yourself, in my opinion. The idea, I think, with coves is to sand as little as you can. All you can really do is make them a worse shape than they already are. So I tend to go to a finer grit earlier than I would on a big surface. Like if we were sanding this with 60 grit, ready for application of sprayable, we had a cove here, I'd try and stay at 80 grit, sand this with 80 grit so as to do less damage to the area adjacent to the cove with your greater pressure that you'll be applying in the cove when I show you how to do it. Just minimises the chance of you making it worse, because if you do apply your cove properly, it shouldn't be far away from a proper cove. So, with the techniques that you can use, basically only a couple of different things you can do, but you've got to try and utilise the flats on the outside of the cove to keep your shape right. There's no use just putting your coving tool into the middle of the cove and sanding straight. All you're going to do is groove that cove in further. You need to use the flats on the outside and sand them as hard as the surface that you're sanding anyway. And nothing hard, just sand soft anyway. But same as when you're sanding primers or bog, we're using diamond patterns predominantly, and we'll be moving with the full length of the coving tool on the flat to the flat below and back in that diamond pattern shape. I'll just do a little bit of that. You see even from that there's a fairly concentrated area that you're sanding, so you don't want to press too hard or you just disturb the fanners through here. Really only needs a light sand. You can also use the heel of the tool here a little bit, keeping the tool on the flat and just using that round. You can do a couple of strokes on the flat like that. Nice tool sitting out on the flat. A little bit like that. A little bit like that. And then back into your diagonal cross hatch pattern again. And then just leave it alone. Once you've got a good shape there, don't go trying to chase every tiny little texture in that cove. All you're going to be doing is making it a worse shape. If that's your sprayable fairing compound or your high build, pick up those last little bits. I like to leave it a little bit undersanded, if anything, but it's quite an easy thing to sand. They're the techniques. Predominantly you just cross hatch, but keep going out onto your flats and working that diamond pattern. Work all the way along with a constant pressure. Don't go trying to dig your cove out. All right?